I think it's been an area of focus for us, and sometimes the way things work is when you're hyper-focused on a particular aspect of it, you're overthinking it. Again, there's a lot of moments in that play looking at that goal because everyone looks at the end product, but we lost possession of the ball, we received the ball, we gave it back, and now we're in transition D. And I think when you're in transition D, we got to do a better job of cutting out the middle because it went out wide, the ball got played back inside, and then it got played out. So again, I think it's just going back to the basics. And then once the ball does go out wide, are we finding our marks? We've had this tendency of having a free guy covering space with nobody covering the man that scored goals in quite a few games. So again, it's a breakdown along the way, and it all starts when we have the ball. So a real focus on understanding when in transition we can keep the ball and try to maintain possession, or when we have to just clear our lines because I'm not sure that this decision is gonna lead to something good, right? And I think and we've had that moment quite a few times where the guys are trying to overplay in transition moments, and it's leading us to more difficult decision making closer to our goal. But at the end of the day, it's really defending the box. And on the second one, I thought, again, had the ball, lose the ball. Emeka and Vera are with, what's his name? Yeah, Aliwani? Oluwaseyi. Yeah, so Emeka and Vera are with Oluwaseyi. He gets the ball and somehow is able to secure it, bump it. And so again, you're looking at like this, the aftermath is bad, but where could we have dealt with it better? And in both situations, it's in transition D, right? And so if we're gonna be a team that wants a lot of possession and we're gonna be higher up the field, then that is an area that we have to be the most elite at, especially if we're not gonna be prolific in front of goal, which we aren't. So like, that is the era in transition where we've just gotta get better to be able to assess like how we put the fires out before they turn until they're just too big for anyone to deal with individually.
An interesting matchup on Saturday, afternoon game against a Galaxy team that's trying to find their first win of the season. What are these kinds of games like where both teams are just kind of maybe in a slump and just trying to battle and get that difference in their season?
Yeah, I think for us, again, I think we've been focusing on our opponent quite a bit in these first 6 games, and this week is just going back to who we are and not really thinking about our opponent, right? We've been, I think, caught in between two worlds, a team that wants to dominate with the ball, which has been great, but then we don't have the tenacity or the mentality of when that ball turns over, what kind of team we look like. And that's the question I posed today to the group is, in those transition moments, are we gonna be a team that puts out these fires, that eliminates these opportunities for our opponents? And that's what we wanna get better at. So again, in this week leading into this game, we usually do our scouts on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we're focused on our opponent. We're not doing that till Friday. We're spending one day on our opponents, and we're spending 4 days on ourselves.
Last one for me. Who are the guys on the defensive end who are leading the charge with that improving the transition defense?
Well, it's going to have to be Glad and the other center back, really, because our right side center back at times is in advanced positions. So they see the field. And one of the things that I found, it's always the hardest thing, is everyone gets caught up watching the game. So in other words, when we break their midfield line and now we're in the attack, center backs will get caught watching the show, as opposed to looking away from the ball and organizing the play behind them so that if it does come out, we are organized, right? So it's gonna have to come from Rafa, it's gonna have to come from Jay, and whoever else is playing center back there.
A lot of things happen at once on goals. Acknowledging that, what did you think of the recovery run the last 40 yards to try to put out the fire?
Yeah, I don't think it was great. But there were, again, I think a couple minutes before that, Vera made a long run down the sideline to put out another fire. And in those conditions, there's a lot of variables that go into it. So looking at it just without context, it looks like a really poor effort. But I'm also thinking about what other variables could lead to that. So it could have been a bit of fatigue from a previous effort not too long before. The conditions were crap, but it's something that we've addressed, and hopefully, again, hopefully we don't put ourselves in that situation, because that's a house is on fire situation versus dealing with just kick it out of bounds. We have a 2v1 against Alawashe, just kick it out of bounds, get our shape, and recover. So instead of trying to fix the house is on fire moments, which doesn't really make sense, it's like make sure you have a fire extinguisher close by and just put it out.
Yeah, an ounce of prevention.
Right.
An ounce of prevention.
Right.
I get that. Following up on the crap conditions, that was a big deal last year when LAFC came and you had the snow game and all that. And so all this talk about changing the calendar, and I don't know how much, say, soccer people get and how much of a business decision that is, but it's like, that's just going to keep happening given where half the league plays.
I am grateful not to be a part of that committee that has to make that decision. And we had two players. We were planning on making 2 subs at halftime, right? We ended up having to make 4 because 2 players are experiencing hypothermic conditions. So those are unintended consequences of having to play in those conditions as well. So I think the more that those situations arise, the more that I think they'll have to, think about all the different ramifications of moving the schedule.
I don't know how many players you knew who played in how many leagues. Like here, it's very unusual to reschedule a game. But I look at schedules for other leagues, and they pick up games and move them to a midweek date 2 months down the road. Just like, well, this doesn't work, and we're moving it, both for other competitions and for weather. You've lived here a long time, been in this league. Would that fly with people in this league?
It's tough. It's tough. I know it happened, I don't know if it was last year or the year before last, where there was a game called off with 30 minutes left, and they had to come back and fly in to play the 30 minutes. Obviously, that is a whole, again, these unintended consequences of dealing with that stuff. But I think if you go into that phase and that becomes the norm, then no one will bat an eye. I think it's the change that will be a shock to everyone.
I look at stuff like in England, sometimes they have 6 games midweek, half the league's playing and half is
right.
Half rescheduled and half
Exactly right.
So it's crazy. Okay, so back to your team. You've talked before about when things aren't going well, you're torn between let's make changes and give somebody else a chance, and if I just let these guys play together 90 more minutes, they might figure it out. So what are you thinking this week? That
is the conundrum, because chemistry and understanding of the player playing next to you could be the solve. But you have to give it 1, maybe 2 more games, even if those performances aren't of the standard that's expected. The other solve is just replace the guy. So it's a conundrum. I don't think there's any right or wrong. I think both will work. I think both will unfortunately take time as well, because you bring in a new guy, the familiarity between the guy to the left of him, to the right of him, and the guy in front of him is going to take some time. Or if the performances aren't great for the current players, it's going to take a little bit of time knowing that they've performed at a higher level. So I think there's going to be a mix and match of both of those heading into the week.
You want players to be aggressive and be brave, and that doesn't always work. So you have to accept a certain, number of mistakes. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand with that, with what you're seeing?
I just think that there's, again, I think when you're going through tough times, what you have to double down on is defending. I just saw this stat that not conceding a goal is actually worth more than scoring a goal, right? Because it keeps you in the game. That's at the soccer level. There's a human component to this as well, that if you're always conceding first, psychologically, your head goes down, you feel like, shit, I've been in this position before, here we go again. And so there's a psychological component as well. So again, this week the focus has been on absolute defending the box, scanning to understand if there's a free player, guys ahead of the ball, blocking crosses, pivots, recovering to areas, and also scanning. So it's just a collective focus on this is the most prized area, not the other box, our box. And once we can control and win our box, then we can now move our teams players deeper. We can move their psychology deeper. And then we'll be in a good way. So, again, it's been, and the interesting thing was, these same situations happened last year. It's not that they didn't happen. They just didn't score. You see what I'm saying? Like, the game of football is that. It's like, it's not like all of a sudden, like, we're not a good defensive team. It's just the chances that they're taking were last year, it would have bounced, hit the post and gone out. Now they're just hitting the back of the net. But there are a lot of those bounce that hit the post and going out too. So the understanding is we got to defend the box really, really well, and that's a collective effort.
What do you think of Jesus?
I thought he was probably our brightest attacking player on the field on the evening. I thought he brings a really good technical quality, tactical understanding, and his movement in the box I thought was really, really good. So again, this is a player that had a fantastic preseason with us, and because of visa and green card and those issues, hasn't been around the team. So I'm really looking forward to him being a part, integrating into the group, because I think he really is a promising young player that can help this team in the attack.